I've used this lens for 2 years straight without much switching, and here's why it became like glued to my camera. Whether it was for documentary work, creating commercials and social media content for my clients, or making YouTube videos and taking photos, the Sigma 28-70mm F2.8 lens was my primary lens for nearly every project. When I was looking for my next zoom lens, there were a couple of criteria for it. First of all, I wanted that lens to have a fast aperture, and it had to be a f2.8 lens. Before then, I had a f4 lens, and that background and foreground separation wasn't enough for the shots I wanted to create. After countless hours of looking up specs and image samples for such lenses as the Sony G Master, Tamron, and Sigma options, not only I noticed the price difference, but also an alternative that could deliver what I was looking for, but in a much budget-friendlier way. The Sigma 28-70 f2.8 DGDN Contemporary, that's a long name, no. This lens stood out for several key reasons. First and foremost was the constant f2.8 aperture. This feature was a must-have, as I would have a consistent exposure throughout the lens, plus the lens would be bright for low light situations and would deliver that nice background separation. Also, its size and weight. At just 470 grams, it's incredibly lightweight. To put that in perspective, Sigma's 24-70mm Art Mark II lens is much heavier at 735 grams, and the Sony's G Master Mark II is 695 grams. This weight reduction means it would be easier to use it handheld and on a gimbal, especially during long filming sessions. And the front filter size is also smaller. While other lenses have a 82mm diameter, this Sigma 28-70 has a 67mm diameter. And it also is a great thing because most of the filters I had at the time were with a 67mm diameter. Plus, they also seem to be slightly cheaper. And speaking of prices, this Sigma lens stands out. While all the uncertainties with tariffs and inflation, you can still get this lens for less than $1,000. I pointed this out because the prices are changing quite a bit lately, and I remember it used to cost less than $900. So if you want to check out the latest prices, check out the links in the description. But in comparison, the lenses I mentioned earlier cost noticeably more. For example, the Sigma's Art lens costs around $1,300, and the Sony's G Master 2 costs around $2,400. Yes, that's 2.5 times more. At the same time, a tool is only as good as its performance on a real job, and saving that money by buying a more budget-friendly lens wouldn't mean a thing if the lens was trash. And this clearly isn't the case, because the Sigma lens met the expectations. The very first project I used it for was a basketball game, and thanks to its out-of-focus performance, I was able to capture videos and photos perfectly. Sure, that could also be because of the Sony a7 IV camera's out-of-focus capabilities. And there has been a lot of talk of that Sony cameras perform better with native lenses, but I haven't had any issues with this Sigma lens, as it gets the job done nicely. The same has been when creating commercials and product videos. The picture quality has been great, and since the lens has a minimal focus distance of 19 centimeters, I have been able to make nice close-ups when that has been needed. It's not a macro lens, so let's not get too excited, but still you can get closer to the subject than with other similar lenses. Also, I must say that this lens is durable. Well, not that I have dropped it or thrown it against the wall, more in the sense that even after all this time with active daily use, there are not many signs of wear and tear. The focus and zoom rings, well, they just work perfectly, and you can still feel that resistance when zooming in and out. No lens is perfect, and this one has its trade-offs. The most significant is the focal range starting at 28 instead of that more common 24mm. For my work, that isn't that big of an issue. However, you will notice that absence of those 4mm. Sure, there have been times during projects when I have been like, oh, you know, I wish I could get this shot just a bit wider, but it hasn't been a deal breaker. Also, I have noticed that there is a bit of a chromatic aberration if you really want to pixel peep it. Not that I would notice on a daily use, but on some occasions, like really some, when taking close-ups of shiny objects without any mist filters, you can notice it a bit. And from what I've seen, it is even less than for some of the other lenses. After using it for 2 years, who I think this lens is for? I think it's for creators who are looking for a bright zoom lens and don't really want to throw all their savings only at one lens, while there's a lot of more gear to be invested in. Also, I think this is a great option for full-frame cameras if you are just starting out. The autofocus, overall picture quality, compact size factor, it's all there. Lately, the only lens with somewhat similar zoom range I would use instead of this Sigma lens is the Sony 24-50 F2.8 G lens. Still considerable as a budget option, but a bit pricier though. And there is a 20mm difference on that long end. But let's talk more about budget camera gear options in this video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Ciao.